everything in this immigration area depends on everything else. And if you pull out a little strut, just whole sections collapse. And frankly, that's what this bill is designed to do. I mean, I tried to read it last night, and I've been soaking myself in this immigration business for 15 years, and the parts I see and understand, I'm laughing at. It's so preposterous. But there's loads of other things that are possible. And so I was looking around and back in my head for ways to describe this bill, and it's almost like a hoax by the Democrats and a complete failure by Republicans. So the way the bill exists, because Democrats in the Senate told the Republican leader McConnell, look, you're not going to get money for Ukraine unless you give us piles of money for bringing more migrants into the country. Mm-hmm. And McConnell wants Ukraine so much that he assigned Senator Langford from Oklahoma to be the chief negotiator. Langford is not a particularly bad guy, but he's completely, wildly out of his depth, and there's no indication that he had many people working with him. So the Democrats took him to the cleaners. It's like sending somebody off to buy a car and they come back with a bicycle. And I'll give you one useful example. So, Democrats are going around and have been for a month saying this bill is a radical improvement in border security. It gives the president the tools he needs to shut down the border when there's a flood of migrants. And so you can do a search. You can see border shutdown is all over the place. And Biden put out a press release saying, I'll shut down the border if the things get chaotic. Okay, fine. So I go looking for the border shutdown stuff. And it says, there's a nice paragraph where it says, if you get 5,000 people turning up at the border for 7 days in a row, or if you get 8,500 people in one day, you can shut down the border. It's mandatory to shut down the border. So there it is. There's the clause, the safety valve, the trigger that Democrats promising we can shut down the border. There's a couple of things about this shutdown. First of all, it's an extremely high number, and we're talking illegals. You would think in a normal society they'd shut down the border as soon as you get 1,000 migrants a day. 1,000 migrants a day is 365,000 a year. 5,000 is almost 2 million a year. So they're basically saying something like this. Don't worry, it's not really an emergency on the border until we're getting almost 2 million people flooding over the border a year. Okay. Next, there's a list of clauses and sections in there that say, well, it's not really that counts. The rules say, well, if it's 5,000 a day, not counting the unaccompanied alien children, of which Biden has imported 500,000. It's 5,000 a day, not counting the people who arrive here with parole tickets written by the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the administration brought in 1 million of those in 2023. It's 5,000 a day, not counting people who are not from Mexico or Canada. I mean, wow. It exempts everybody in the world except for Mexicans and Canadians. It's 5,000 a day, and this authority expires in 3 years. And it's 5,000 a day, and you don't shut down the border unless the Homeland Secretary says so. It's an entirely meaningless hoax. There's nothing to the border trigger. It's meaningless. It's a magician's trick. It's a hoax.
Okay, so you couldn't have spelled that out better. Okay, so what's the switcheroo? If they're distracting us with this over here, what are they really doing in the other 306 pages?
That's the question. So you then have to dig in and look around and scratch around, and you see there's in the budget it talks about here $20 billion for processing at the border, for border security. Well, when you dig through this $20 billion, what do you find? So there's one, like a section that says, here's $100 million for installing machines at the border to detect fentanyl and other drugs. Only $100 million? Like, shouldn't we have deployed that 5-10 years ago? Fine. So that's money there that they're going to use to rubber stamp migrants at the border, to transport them up to cities, to house them in shelters, to train them for jobs, to feed them. And that's not counting city money. So basically, many billions of dollars in there to get the migrants up into American cities and to hide them during the election. Okay, well, that's a lot of spending. But the biggest thing really in the bill is it creates an entirely new mechanism for people to migrate into the country. The entirely new mechanism basically says we're not going to have anyone sneak over the border. That's very bad. We're very, very naughty. That's not going to be allowed. It doesn't include any extra punishments. It just says they're going to be deported. Well, okay. How do you... Current law says people are not supposed to sneak across the border, and the federal government is simply not responding to that. And how does it do that? Well, it's entirely unclear, and because they don't really care. What the bill does, it sets up big, wide gates at the border, so that if you're an illegal migrant, you just rub your chin and say, well, if I go across the border, I have to get through the desert, and then I have to work in the underground economy, and sure, it's better than where I come from, and I can send money home to my kids, so I'll do that. But the new bill offers me another opportunity. I walk up to the front gate on the border, one of the ports of entry, and there's a nice lady who used to work for pro-migration groups, and she's going to give me some easy questions, and she's going to smile, and then she's going to give me asylum on the spot so I get work permits and I can move anywhere around the United States. It sets up a new process. It hires thousands of people in order to set up a fast-track rubber stamp for asylum, so that people will basically get work permits as soon as they turn up at the door. A week or two later, they get asylum. And once you get asylum, you're legal. You're in. That's it. You're here.
Hold on. I got to stop you. I got to stop you here, Neil. All right. So this is important. It's not good enough, if I may, for conservatives to say, it's true, but it's not good enough for conservatives to say, I'm against this bill because it doesn't do what you say it does. It doesn't secure the border, right? Because it's like, okay, how do you know, or what? It's not a strong enough argument. The argument needs to be what you're talking about. Like part two of that is, here's what it really does, right? Are you with me on like the new? I'm sure you are. I want to make sure everyone's with me.
You use the word distraction. That's the correct word. This border shutdown is a distraction, while they create a massive series of escalators on the border. Yes. To quickly convert economic migrants into asylees. Asylees is a legal status that says you are legally entitled to live here, and in 5 years you're going to get citizenship and you're going to vote. And the first thing you're going to vote for, naturally, reasonably, understandably, is you're going to vote for the political party that let your cousins and your family come to the United States.
Okay, wait, that 5 years thing, did you make that up?
No, that's 5 years. It's fast. In one of the previous, in the Gang of Eight amnesty, they had like a 13-year gap between when illegals, when you sign the deal and when illegals would get citizenship. This is a 5-year gap. They'd actually get, as soon as this is signed, the first voters coming through would turn up at the ballot in 2030. It's really fast.
Okay, I know you said it twice. We got to say it a third time. You're telling me that right now the asylum law is something like you show up at the border, you say what you got to say, but then they give you a hearing, and like we know they go out now to like 2029, and then how it would ideally work is you go in front of your hearing, and the judge is like, oh, you're not here for any of the real asylum reasons. You have to be deported. You're gone.
Yeah, this is the current reality. This is the pre-law. Basically, the law is so the federal government just simply doesn't want to enforce the law, so it allows huge numbers of migrants into the country, and the government sort of throws up its hands. Oh, there's nothing we can do. And basically, a part of this nothing we can do routine, it says, turn up at asylum court in 4, 5, 7 years. Well,
yes. So now that you're saying with this bill, let's say this bill passes today. It won't, but let's say it passes today. What does the new asylum process look like instead?
Basically, you get asylum if you come in just before the law is passed, you get a court date in 5 to 7 years. If you come after the law is passed, you get citizenship in 5 years.
Oh, hot dog. Are you kidding me?
Right, it's ridiculous.
Okay, I'm giving you an opportunity right now to be like, you know what, I made that up. That's not really true. Are you telling me that's in there?
It's really there. And it's so one of the things is, it says there's a part of the funding is there's funding to hire 4,300 or so asylum officers, okay? When Biden's deputies want to hire asylum officers, they're going to go straight to the border nonprofits that are bringing people in. They're going to go to the liberal universities and hire pro-migration progressive graduates. They're going to hire the people that are now on the streets saying from Gaza from the river to the sea. They're going to hire those people, and they're going to give them a rubber stamp, and they're going to give them the legal authority to say, that story sounds so sympathetic. You've had such a terrible time, but now you're at the border. Let me hold your hand. Look, rubber stamp. You're a citizen in 5 years. It's insane. Under current law.
I can't believe that's
in there. So under current law, if someone wants to claim asylum, they're mean to me. The government, killed my cousin or whatever. They have to get in line and go to an immigration court. An immigration court we have a sort of independent legal judiciary for immigration courts. They're run out of the Justice Department. They're not the same as the criminal courts. They have hundreds of judges who sit and judge these asylum pleas all the time. And most of the time the judges say, look, you're a nice guy. You spend a lot of time getting up here. It'd be lovely to have, it's perfectly reasonable for you to want what you want, but you don't meet the law's requirements. We're sending you home. Fine. That's the current situation. But this would say to basically thousands of woke hires, you don't need to go through that judge. Take this rubber stamp, and anyone who comes to you at the border, you can rubber stamp them into citizenship. And so that's the big thing. That's what they're trying to distract.
Because all we ever hear about the left is like, we need a pathway to citizenship, and this is it.
Yeah, this is a super fast pathway to citizenship. Like, they're basically snatching migrants at the border and getting them into citizenship.
It's good. Good for them.
And so, in that sense, the bill is so bad. I'm wondering, why did Democrats do this? It's like, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to humiliate Republicans? So if you go buy a car, right, the car salesman will look at your money and he'll say, you're a fine judge of character. I see you understand everything that's going on. You deserve this car. You've certainly got the money to do it. And they'll try and rip you off in that way. Fair enough. In this, the Democrats are basically saying to Republicans, you're a bunch of saps. Look, we conned you again. Look, here's a distraction. Look, here's a rubber ducky. Now give me, $50,000 for a used Ford Pinto. The Democrats it's like ripping somebody off to their face and laughing to them. So, in that sense, the bill is, in that sense, is weird. It's so one-sided. It's so skewed. It's so ridiculous that you got to wonder how come the Democrats had just failed to make it plausible. Now, look, here's the larger thing. Okay, this is a country of 330 million. Every year, we have 4 million births. It's 3.6, 3.7. So we've got 3.7 million new babies, okay? We also have about 3.7 million young men and women who turn 18 to go out and look for jobs. This bill will allow the government to bring in, no problem. Now, that's how many? We've got 3.6 million births, 4 million 18-year-olds. And we have 1 million immigrants. We're basically bringing in 1 million legal immigrants like me for every 3 to 4 Americans, okay? That's a lot.
Okay.
This bill will allow them to bring in far more than that, easily 1 million, maybe 2 million. And so we'd be in a situation where for every American birth, Democrats are bringing in roughly 1 migrant, okay? That's not a country. A country that brings in 1 immigrant for every birth is not a country anymore. It's a supermarket. It's a production plant. It's just an economy where the federal government is bringing in more people, because more people are great for business. More customers, more workers, more renters, more people manufacturing tiny amounts of profit for Wall Street to live on. The bill treats America as basically a shopping mall. The government wants to bring in more customers, and since Americans aren't having enough babies, we're simply going to bring in more customers. And this bill does not limit the number of people the government can bring in. It sets no limit on the number of people that the government can bring in. But this bill basically says that the government will be allowed to go around the world finding people to import, and we'll pull them out of their home countries, we'll get them to the border, we'll rubber stamp them in. And that's how this government wants to grow, not just by expanding more programs, but by literally pulling in more people from the rest of the world. And Americans as a society are standing around saying, hey, what about my kids? What about the kid down the street who's on drugs? What about the girl across the street who got a college degree and can't find a job? And the government, the answer in this bill is, we don't care.